Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another puzzle video. Today, I have a really fun little puzzle that I have to give a shout out to my good friend Reality. That's his screen name, not his real name. At least I don't think it is. But he helped me out quite a while ago when I was trying to figure out how to make a puzzle like this. So thank you, Reality. All the credit goes to you, but I'm just going to show his method and how we figured out how to do this puzzle. This is kind of a common puzzle that I see in a lot of horror games where you have a keypad like this and you click on a button and it will activate different buttons, and your goal is basically to get them all lit up. This is a really fun little puzzle, and it's very customizable as well. So I'm going to show you guys how to set up the answer key over here that you can configure which button turns on, which button turns multiple keys on, and so on. So the files for all of this will be in the links below. I am making the actual buttons completely free for you guys. If you want to support me and get a little bit extra, I did create this this model here that I put a little bit of work into that you can get by signing up on the Patreon. You can check out the options there. It means a lot. I really appreciate the support, but I also understand that not everyone can do that. So thank you guys either way. As far as prerequisites go, I show you guys how to do pretty much everything in this video, with the exception of the interaction. So I've got a tutorial that I show you guys how to make an interaction system. I will leave a link for that as well. But that is pretty much it. Everything else is in the video. If you guys have any questions, as always, please let me know. Check out the links below if you want to support me, and let's get started. Okay, guys, here we are back in the project. I've created another little just hallway area just for us to have a little bit of extra room just to test this out. I really need to just create a new environment. I have some ideas for new environments, but if you guys have any ideas or environments that you'd like to see me create and maybe give some tips and just some thoughts on how to create different environments, let me know in the comments below. But let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to do everything from the beginning here. I haven't imported any of the meshes yet. I figured I would just do that again just as kind of a refresher and just show you guys how I'm doing everything. So I'm just going to call this... this is just going to be keypad. And let's see, I have a button and I have the keypad box here. I'm going to go ahead and import those. And then we have our textures. Go ahead and bring those in. Remember, when we import textures, we need to open up the ORM, and everything keeps opening on my other monitors. Sorry about that. And we need to scroll down and make sure that the sRGB is unchecked. That's specifically for the ORMs. All right, that looks good. Now we need to, let's go ahead and open these. Once again, that's opening on my other monitor. That's very annoying. We need to assign our materials to these. So I am going to find my materials, and I'm just going to copy this switch that I have, mi underscore, this will be keypad box, we'll say, and just go ahead and put that on the default material so that we already have that set. And then we'll find our new textures and just put those on. Okay. Now, this specific model is available specifically to my Patreon members. I took a little bit of time today to create this as just a little bit of an extra bonus for them. You can still, obviously, of course, create this puzzle without this. But if you'd like to get access to this and support me, just be sure to head on down to the links below and check out how you can support me there and get access to these models. Now, I am giving this button to you guys, but we need to create a material for it because I didn't actually create a material or create textures for this because we don't really need them. Really, all that we need to do is we're going to just create a new material. I'm going to call it m_button. Actually, I'm going to call this button off because we need two different states here. We need a material for when it is off, and then we need an emissive material that kind of lights up when it's turned on. So for off, this is going to be very, very basic here. We're just going to put in a color, and we're just going to make it something kind of like a little bit of a beige. That's fine there. And we could put in roughness and metallic. We don't really need them, but I'll just set this to set the roughness to something like 0.7. Should be fine. Maybe like 0.25 for the metallic. We can always adjust those. Actually, I'm going to make this a little lighter. All right. So again, this is just super basic, but this is going to be our default for the button when it is off. So I'll go ahead and set that to the default material. Let's save that. Let's also just save everything while we are at it. And let's see. Now we need, go ahead and close that. Now I need, I'm going to just duplicate this. So Control D to duplicate, and we're going to call this m_button on. And essentially what we're going to do is just add an emissive here. So I'm just holding down 3, by the way, to get this. They call it a constant vector 3. They call that, I don't know why I'm saying they. I don't know who they is. We call that a constant 3. Just gives you 3 different values to create a color. So actually, you know what? Let's just copy what we have here so it's the exact same color. So highlight that, Control D to duplicate that. Now we could just plug this directly into emissive, but I want to have a little bit more control. So I'm going to multiply this, plug that into emissive, and then we can set an actual value here. You could also create a constant 1, holding down the 1 key and clicking. You can also just right-click and search for constant vector. But we can create a variable here that we can adjust the actual value here. So maybe we make this a little bit higher, maybe something like 5, just to give it a little bit, you know, a more emission there. And again, you can change that and tweak that however you want. You could also change the colors. Maybe you want to do like red as the default off and then green is on. You could absolutely do that. All right, so let's go ahead and close all of this now. We've got our meshes, we've got our materials. One other thing that I need to bring in is, I can find it. I got just a very simple sound on freesound.org that will just be used for our button clicks. So we'll go ahead and import that into our sound folder. And now I think we are ready. So we are going to do a new blueprints, just an actor. And we're going to call this BP Keypad. We'll say with lights. All right, so let's open that up. And we are going to go back to our meshes, get our keypad, go ahead and bring in our base here. And then I'm going to bring in the keypad or the button here. And I'm going to rename this button 0. And the reason for that is because we're going to duplicate this button 8 times so that we have 9 buttons total. So, and I want these to be numbered just to keep track of them. So I'm going to just highlight that. You could, of course, just keep bringing them in, but I'm just going to highlight that, hit Control D to duplicate, and now I can just do this pretty quickly until we get button 7, button 8. So we want 9 buttons total, but we're starting at 0, so 0 through 8 gives us 9 buttons. Now, what I want to do, I believe, let me look at my notes. Yeah, I kind of messed up here. I didn't really set these or think about this when I was making these as far as the size goes, but this is kind of an easy thing to fix here or to set. So I'm going to go to, I'm going to select all of the buttons. And I'm going to set the size to 1.3. And the reason that I'm going to do that, I'm going to click on button 1, and then you'll see that it gives me kind of a nice spacing when I pull these out. So we're going to put button 2 here. Be very careful when you're placing these buttons because they do need to be in the correct order. So I'm going to click on button 3, which is actually 4. Button 4 is going to be there. 5 is going to be there. 6 will be there. 7 will be there. And our last button will be there. Okay. Now let's also kind of move this into place, and I will, let's see. Maybe we can move these. Try and get these centered roughly. I think that looks good. And I'm going to resize this because I think this is a little too big. And just turn off the clipping there. And just kind of tweak this till I get it pretty close to where I want it. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. Okay, now let's go ahead and compile and save. And also, let's just go ahead and bring this out into our environments so that we can just get this set up for testing. Okay. I think that looks pretty good. Let me just see how that looks. Yeah, just want it to be roughly at our eye level there. So I think that looks good. Let's go back here. And now the first thing that I want to do is we need a way to kind of keep track of all of these buttons. And so we basically want to create a variable that contains all of these buttons in an array. And what we can do in the construction script here, so if you remember, the construction script will run before begin play, so it will do all this before we start. We can get all of these buttons, and we can just drag them out. And we're going to do make array. Now this is a little annoying because we need 9 pins. Again, 0 through 8. It always is a little confusing because we're starting at 0. But we need to make sure that these are plugged in correctly. So kind of a little annoying, but we just have to go through and swap these all around. So 2 into 2, 3 into 3, 4 into 4, 5, almost there, 6, 7, and 8. Okay, there we go. Now, we can drag out of array here, and we can just promote this to a variable, and we can just call that buttons. So now we are creating an array and getting that variable set right off the bat so that we can keep track of all of those. Now, the other thing that we're going to do is I don't believe we have created structs before. We are going to create a struct. So I'm actually going to create a new folder here. Call this structs. Open that, and we are going to look for structure. And I'm going to call this s_buttons to activate. The reason that we're doing this, this will make a little bit more sense later on, but we need a way to keep track of our buttons, but then we're going to have two different states of each button, right? So we're going to have, it can either be on or off. And then in addition to that, we're also going to need a way to keep track of which buttons turn on when we press one button, because we can press one button and we may be able to turn 3 buttons on or 4 buttons on. So what this will allow us to do, if we open this up, we can go over to our structure here, and this lets us create a variable. So I'm just going to call this buttons. And the type is going to be an integer, and it's going to be an array. Okay, so we can save that, and we are finished with that for right now. All right, so the first thing that we want to do now, let's go ahead and delete all of this. First of all, this is going to be, I thought I hit delete there. Why is that not deleting? Okay, that was weird. I'm not sure why that was not working. I just had to close the blueprint and reopen it, and now it worked. But the first thing that we want to do is, because this is going to be an actor that we want to interact with, we need to go to our class settings and add our BPI interaction. Again, I will leave a link to the tutorial on how to create this. If you have not set this up, or if you have your own, of course, you can use that. So this will get our interaction set up. And this is going to be pretty similar to the lock that we did, wherever it is. So it's going to be pretty similar to that. You really could just kind of copy and paste the stuff that we did, but I will just run through it again, just so I'm not leaving anything out. So we want to have a camera in here. So we're going to add a camera. Okay, and let's go ahead and look at that in the viewport. And we just want to move this until we get this set up. Let's see. Something is not right. Might be way too close. Okay, let's do this. Drag this out so that we can see things a little bit easier. Yeah, I think we were just a little too close. So I want kind of something kind of like that. Okay, compile and save. And now let's go back here. And the first thing that we're going to do is get our player controller. And we are going to set view target with blend. The new view target is going to be self. And we're going to want to do a few things. So let's get our player character. We want to disable movements. Okay. Plug that up. Then we want to ignore, what's it called? Let's see. I always forget. We need the player controller again. And we need to set ignore look input is what we want. And we're going to check true there. And we need to set our blend time here. I'm going to set it to 0.5. And then we'll just do a little bit of a delay here as well. 0.5, whoops, 0.5. And then from our player controller, once again, we want to enable inputs. And this is where I messed up last time. They automatically plug that into target, but that needs to be player controller. So make sure that that is set right there. And then out of our player controller, we also want to show mouse cursor, set show mouse cursor to true. Okay. And I'm just going to clean this up a little bit. I think that's good. Okay, so before we go any further, let's just test that. Make sure that that works. Okay, that looks good. All right. So now we need a way to exit that view. So we'll do a custom event, and I'm just going to call it exit view. And I'm going to do that on, let's see, escape. And I'll also do it on keyboard Q. So we want to call our exit view when either of those are pressed. All right, so we'll just put this out of the way. And on our exit view, we are going to basically do all this, but in reverse. So we will get player controller. We also need get player character. I'm just going to duplicate that really fast. And we want to set view. Oh, I have to do that from player controller, set view target with blends. Okay. And our new target will be our player character because we're going back to our player character's camera. And then we want to, let's see, out of our player controller, we want to disable inputs. And once again, be careful because that automatically plugs into target, and we actually need that to plug into player controller. And then we also want to reset ignore look inputs. Oops. Okay. And then with our player character, we're going to set movement mode. Whoops. Just trying to keep things clean. Set movement mode to walking. And then one more thing that we need to do, or the last thing that we need to do out of our player controller, we want to set show mouse cursor back to false. And that should be good. All right, so let's test that before we go any further. All right, so E to interact, and now if I press Q, we go back into the game, E back into this, Q to exit. So that looks perfect. Okay. Now I am going to I'm going to do this a little bit different than the other puzzles that we have done, because I honestly kind of like this method, but I also just want to show you guys different ways to do things, because as with everything, there's multiple ways that you can do things. You could do this puzzle with click events. You could do this puzzle similar to what we did with the combination lock, where you create a widget. But I'm going to do something a little bit more similar to click events, but instead of click events, because I know there were a couple of people that had some issues with getting those to work with other systems, we are going to use a line trace. Now, we use a line trace already on our character, but there's plenty of other ways that you can use a line trace. And one thing that you can do is you can actually create a line trace that comes from where your mouse pointer is. So if we get left mouse button, so meaning when we press our left mouse button, we can actually just make a line trace to come out of where our mouse is. And we can do that by getting our player controller. And if I drag out of player controller, there is a function called convert mouse location to world space. And let's also just do an is valid here, just to make sure that we are valid with the player controller. So if this is valid, then we will do a branch. The condition will be the return value here. And we're going to do a line trace by channel. And this is not always needed, but in this instance, in my testing, I did run into some issues with this. So I'm going to recommend that you uncheck ignore self. And now we need to get our start and our end locations. Now, our start location is very simple. It's just going to be our world location from our mouse. And then our end is going to be our world direction that we're going to multiply by a float. So we'll convert that to a float. And this number is just going to be the distance that our line trace is going to be coming from the mouse. So you can just kind of experiment with this, but something like 150 should be good. That's probably too long, to be honest, but anywhere from like 50 to 100, 150, somewhere around there should be good. And then we're going to add that to our world location. And that will be our endpoints. Okay. Now, the next thing that we're going to do is run a branch out of our return value. And on the out hit, we're going to break the hit results. And we are looking for hit components. because we want to hit a component, which is essentially a static mesh component, and we want to know what component we are hitting. So we can actually just pull out of that and type get object name. And this is very nice because this will literally just convert whatever is hit into a string. So we can actually just do a print string here, and we can go ahead and test this if we set everything up right. And this should work. So let's go ahead and play. So we'll go in here, and now if I press or click, wherever I'm clicking, it is going to tell us what we are actually hitting. So even if we click up here, you can see we're clicking SM Keybox, static mesh 0. So that is a very useful way of registering your mouse to click on something. Because I know a lot of times, especially when I was getting into game development early, I was like, okay, I know that I need to click on something to do something, but I don't really know how to do that, right? So again, there's multiple ways to do this. You know, click events are a way. You could create a widget, but I kind of like this method, and I think it works pretty well for this specific puzzle. Okay, so let's go back here, and let's also right here, let's play a sound, and we will do our, let's see, where did I put my sounds? We'll do our button press here, okay? Okay, compile and save. And now what we need to do now is let's go ahead and create another variable. We need a couple of other variables. First of all, like I said, we're going to have two different states that our buttons can be in. So let's call this button activation states. And that will just be a Boolean. We just want to know if it's on or off. But it will be an array. Okay. So let's go ahead and compile and save. And then we also are going to want to do another variable. And we're going to call this one button config. Because, like I said, we are keeping track of our buttons. We're making an array here. But we need a way to keep track of when we click on, let's say, button 1. When we click on button 1, and we want it to activate button 4, button 6, and button 7, we need a way to keep track of those buttons. And so that's what we're going to use here. And this is a new variable type that we haven't used before. First of all, this is going to be an integer. But over here, it's going to be a map. And what a map does is allow us to basically have more information into this one variable. And so we have our initial variable here that is an integer, but then we have another drop-down box that we can choose another variable. And the other variable that we're going to choose is that struct that we made. So s underscore button to activate. Okay. So now, before we go any further, let's go ahead and create a function to handle changing our buttons between on and off. So basically, we want to just be able to toggle it on and off by switching those two materials. So let's create a function, and we'll call that toggle activation. And here we're going to get our button activation state. And we're going to get a copy. And we're going to have an index here. We need an input in our toggle activation here. If you just drag and kind of hover over that, it will automatically add a pin. And I'm just going to rename this to button index. And out of our button activation state, we want to set array elements and hook that up like so. And our index, our button index is going to plug into index. And then we're going to get a not Boolean here, not bool. And that's going to plug into our item. Okay. Now, we're going to need a little bit more here. I'm going to just kind of rearrange this. So our end goal here is to basically be able to get our buttons and also get the state, the current state that it is in. And then we're going to use that to determine whether we set the material to be on or off, the button on, button off materials. So what we are going to do is we are going to, once again, out of our button activation state, we're going to do a get copy again. And we need another reference to our index. So I'm going to plug that in like so. And this will go into a branch that is going to be plugged in here. Just need a little room here. Because we also need to get our buttons. And we're going to get a copy there. And then we're also going to need a reference to our index again. So this is getting kind of messy. Let's see. From our button here, we are going to get object by name. And let's just move this down. I'm going to print out the string here just so that we know what's going on here. Print string. We'll hook this up in between there. Okay, this is really quite messy. Not sure the best way to do this. There really is no great way to do this sometimes. Sure, we'll go with that. Okay. Then from our get here, we are going to set material. Just set material is all we need. And like I said, we're going to either set it on or off. So when this is true, this is going to be on. So let's find our material that we made, which is button on. Plug that in there. And then I'm just going to duplicate that with Control D. And this one is going to be off. Oops. And that will also be, the target will also be the buttons there. Okay. So now if we set that up right, let's go ahead and compile and save. If we go back to our event graph here, we can grab our hit component here and cast to static mesh components. And we can also get our buttons, and we can find item. So as static mesh component, we're going to find the button there. And then out of our cast here, we will call toggle activation. And that button index will be where we plug in the find there. Now, if we set that all up right, this should toggle those on and off. Let's go ahead and try that. Okay, it is not working. But it is tracking the buttons correctly. So it's saying, okay, we pressed button 0, and we're confirming that we're pressing button 0 so that we know, let's see. We know this is working. Let's see, what is going on here? Oh, I see our problem. We didn't actually add our buttons to our variable here. We have 0 buttons in the array. We need to add 9 inputs here so that we have our different states. So we stop at 8, 0 through 8, compile and save. Now let's try that out. There we go. Okay. So that is working as intended now. Looks good. We're toggling them on and off. And that looks good. Okay. Let's go back. And let's go back to our event graph. Now, the next thing that we need to do, let's go back to our button config. While I'm thinking about this, we need to actually add our elements in here as well. Now, there is I don't know if it's a bug or just an annoying thing here, but we need to add 9 elements here. But you'll notice that you'll run into a problem here when you add the first one, it works. But then if we try to add a second one, it says cannot add key to the map while the key is the same value exists. The problem is it's trying to add another element here that is 0. So what I'm going to do is rename this to 9. And now I can add another one, which will be 0. This is a little annoying because we have to go in here and rename these. So this one is going to be 0. But since we keep adding 0, I'm just going to leave that as 9 until we get to 8. So I'm going to add another one. That's going to be 2. Add another one, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And then I'm going to go back and change this one to 0. Let's go ahead and compile and save. That is just kind of an annoying thing when you have a map like that. You're not able to add multiple ones without changing the names. The other thing that we want to do is set this to public, because this is going to be how we configure this. So if we click on this, you can see that we have all of our buttons here. And then what we can do is actually drop down here and we can add additional elements. And what this means is when I click on button 0, it's going to activate, but then I can also choose to have, let's say, button 1 activates, and maybe, what is this? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Whoops, 4. Okay. Now, it's not going to work yet because we don't have that configured, but that is how you're going to set this up as sort of your answer here. You go in, you configure the buttons, and you tell them which button you want to have activated in addition to the regular button. So they're going to activate by default the button that you click, and the buttons that you're adding here are additional buttons. So if you only want one to light up or to activate, you don't need to add anything. But if you want 2 or more, you need to add your additional elements there. Okay, I hope that makes sense. We'll go through that a little bit more when we set this. Let's go back here though. And let's get this to work, because what we want to do is we essentially want to run our toggle activation on the other buttons that we are configuring in here. So the way that we're going to do that is move over here. We're going to get our button config. We're going to find, and we need our index. So, or our index from our buttons. So that will go in there. And out of this pin, we can break s_buttons to activate. So if you remember, that is the struct that we made. We go back and look at that. We created that variable called buttons, which is an integer. So that essentially just gives us access to that. And we're going to run a for loop for, a for each loop. And we want to do a branch here as well. So get a branch. And our condition is going to be out of our find here. When that is true, we will run through our for each loop. And out of our loop body, we will toggle activation. Okay. And then our array element will be our button index there. Okay. So let's go ahead and try that and see if that is working. So let's configure some things here. The first one, well, I guess let's just go ahead and make sure that this works. So when we press the first button, we should expect the first button to light up, as well as one, which is actually the second button, and the fourth, which is the middle button, I believe. So let's just try that out. Okay, so we're going to press that, and there we go. That's working perfectly. Now, because we're tracking the state of each one of these, we should be able to click on this one, and that will turn it off. If I press this again, it's rotating or toggling each activation of each one of those buttons. So it's going to turn this one on. And then, of course, if we go back and turn that on, then it is going to turn all three of those on. Okay? So this is very close to what we want. Now, we need a way to check our answer. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's create a function called check answer. And what we want to do here is we want to essentially compare our buttons with the button activation states. And we can get the length of each of these. And when these are equal, so equal, we can straighten that, run a branch. Now, this should always be true. If it is not, then we have an error. But this should not ever run true or run false. We can just type a print string here and just type something like error. But this should always be true. And then out of our, or actually, let's get our button activation state again. We can run a for each loop with that in our true. When this is completed, then this will essentially say that we have solved our puzzle. So we're going to add a return node, and we'll add an output called success, and we will set that to true. Okay, and then out of our array element here, we will run a branch. And as long as this is false, I'm actually just going to copy the return node there. As long as that is false, that will give us a false on the success. When it runs through the for loop and actually finishes and is completed, then it gives us true success. So we can compile and save and go back to our event graph. And now we can call our puzzle or check answer. We can call that on the completed of the for each loop here. So we'll call check answer. We can also call it on false here and run a branch. So when that returns true, we will print a string and we will say puzzle completed. And then we'll also just do a short little delay here, maybe like half a second. And we will call exit view so that it exits out of the view, goes back into the game. Okay, so let's go ahead and give that a try now. Now, we only have one button really configured, but really, I mean, you wouldn't even have to configure any of the buttons because what we're actually checking is when all of the buttons are lit up, that is when it returns true that we have solved the puzzle. But obviously you want to make it a little bit harder by, setting some buttons to do different things, but we can still test it out here. So let's go ahead and try. So if we press this button, it's going to light those three up. Now we can select all the other ones and there we go. Puzzle completed. Okay. So now you can go in here and you can play around and, you can configure these however you want. Maybe we go to button 4 and we say that we're going to toggle, I don't know, button 2 and maybe, let's see, what is this one? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And let's say button 5 as well. And then maybe another one. Let's do this one, which would be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We'll maybe do one additional one. So maybe like this one, which I think is 7. Okay, so let's try that out. All right, so now we can hit some things. Now we get a kind of messed up thing here. And there we go. All right, so there's so many different ways that you could do this. You could also do this with more buttons. I think it would be pretty fun if maybe you did like a row of, maybe like 5 by 5 buttons. So you had 25 different buttons. You could also do this with just a single row, maybe a single row of 5 buttons or a single row of 10 buttons or something like that. It could be horizontal, it could be vertical. There's so many different ways that you could do this. And I hope that this just gives you guys some ideas how to, create a puzzle. You could apply this to multiple other puzzles as well. You're probably starting to see that as we do more and more of these puzzles, essentially, a puzzle is pretty similar from one puzzle to another. You're just trying to do one thing. You're comparing results a lot of times to figure out your answer, if your answer is true or not, and that solves your puzzle. So if you guys would like more, be sure to let me know. I could maybe do a second episode on this specific puzzle if you want to see, how to actually do something, how to maybe have that unlock a door, how to have that turn on a light or something like that. We've done some puzzles in the past and shown how to do that. You could do that with an event dispatcher. But if you guys would like to see more, just let me know. I'm also going to be making some environment tutorials. mainly focused on horror, of course. But if you guys have any suggestions for those, as always, let me know. If you have any questions, as always, let me know. Thank you guys so much for all of the support. You guys are awesome. If you haven't already, be sure to check out the links below. You can check out our Patreon, where we've got some great discussions going on in the Discord. You can check out the assets that I sell on Fab, and everything is down there below. Thank you guys. You rock. Have a wonderful day or night, and I will see you guys on the next episode. All right. Take care, guys.